Remember this marketing analytics roadmap? Yeah, okay. So last week we were discussing this. This is kind of the layout that we are using for this class, okay? And last week we generally talked about the importance of marketing analytics. Why do we have this type of lecture? This is the kind of marketing introduction to marketing analytics or research in marketing. But today we will talk about different research design, second step, right? So after the problem identification, which is something that you need to do, and it should have managerial relevance. But in every step, actually, we'll talk about this problem identification, right? So without a proper research question, you cannot come up with research design, and you cannot decide what type of data that you need. So it all starts with a proper, relevant research question, right? So, and then how you can develop research question, you need to find either an opportunity or a problem. That's why we said that problem identification, but it doesn't have to be problem. Sometimes you see an opportunity and you like to research. You like to conduct research to understand if it is feasible, if it is like meaningful for you or not. And some research questions, like I said, for my research, advertising effectiveness, depending on your data, you can develop some research questions, but it is highly contextual. You need to understand your target audience. You need to understand the data that you have, or overall market conditions as well. So without knowing what to do as research, you cannot develop a research question as well, right? So you cannot actually randomly generate research question. But today, when we talk about research design, I'm sure you'll get some ideas about what type of research question that you can develop based on the research type that you can conduct as well, right? So if you don't have any idea about what is going on in the industry or in the market or for the brand, then maybe more exploratory approach would be better for you, right? So you can get an understanding of what is going on. But if you already have some idea, right? If you have some sales data, you have some past metrics, etc., then maybe you can develop more, descriptive research or even causal research to test further ideas, right? But it's all hand in hand, like I said. But today, this is our agenda, second step, but I'm going to go over those marketing analytics roadmap once again, since it is important, and last week we kind of rushed at that part. But yeah, so basically we have 4 different types of research in terms of research design, okay? And then today we are going to talk about all of those, but we will pay a bit more attention to exploratory research and also qualitative data as well. I think last week one of you asked me about qualitative data, and I said we are not going to run any analysis on qualitative data, but we are going to cover the basics of qualitative data. Good news, you can also do qualitative analysis on R. I'm going to share a couple of packages, but we don't have any qualitative data set to run analysis, okay? All right, so third step in the research process or marketing analytics roadmap, after deciding on the research design, what type of research that you like to do, either causal research, kind of experiment or something. Third one is designing the data collection, which is something that we are going to start next week, right? So data collection, you can either look at the secondary data and run some analysis, or you can collect your own data, primary data, which is part of your coursework, actually. We would like you to run a survey and collect data in questionnaire format, okay? This is something we call primary data. But basically, we are going to cover both of those. For your individual coursework, again, some of you asked me about that. I'm going to give you a secondary data, right? An existing, already collected field experiment data, and then you are going to work on that one. So, in a way, the data set that I'm going to give you would be some sort of, either you can think of it as commercial database, which is very small. Actually, commercial databases are just generally vast amount of data they have, and then you can either buy or download some of the data, or you can do web scraping. This is how I get most of my social media data as well. Again, on R, you can do some web scraping and get some social media comments too, okay? And then, yeah, some government databases and then literature review. It is also part of secondary research. I'm sure you already know how to use the library resources or access to the articles. If you don't know how it is done, please make sure that you know it and have access to all the library services and databases, because I will ask you to do secondary research for both your individual coursework and also group coursework, okay? So when I say secondary research, literature review. So you need to find, next week I'm planning to actually go over that as well. So because I really don't like when students just randomly search something on Google and then get the first result and thinking that that article is a good article. Okay, so now you are part of this program, you will get an LSE degree. At least you need to have an understanding of what type of articles are good or reliable articles, or what type of data is actually reliable as well. So you cannot just randomly find an article and say that based on the study we need to do this. Okay, especially in the business settings, you need to be more careful and you need to know your resources and find some reliable resources. Okay, I mean, just out of my mind, top of my mind, for example, Wikipedia. We all know that Wikipedia is a brilliant resource, very easy to find, but it's not reliable. Okay, so you can easily change something on Wikipedia, and you need to double check the resources they provide and check if they are real or not. So you need to do all of those cross-checking before referencing any numbers or statistics. Are you all clear on that? Okay, do not cite Wikipedia directly, please. Wikipedia is like citing Google as well. All right, so primary, secondary data, this is something we are going to cover next week, like I said. And I introduced these variables, qualitative and quantitative type of variables, as early as possible, because most of the time students have a hard time to understand these different variables. Okay, and if you don't understand those variables, when you run regression analysis, for example, and when you put ordinal variables in regression analysis, it's not gonna work out for you. Okay, so you need to know the variables, and without understanding them, you cannot simply run any analysis. And most of the time, students, since they don't have any understanding of those variables, they simply ask ChatGPT, here is my data, can you run an analysis, can you run a regression for me? And ChatGPT, without knowing what is what, right? So because if you don't know the ordinal scale, or like if you just share the data as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ChatGPT will think that, oh, okay, this is actually interval scale and I can use it for everything. But if you code that ordinal scale as interval, some of you actually looking at me like, what are you talking? Okay, let me remind you what was ordinal scale and interval scale. Maybe we can have this discussion afterwards. So we have first nominal scales. When you collect data, we call them scale items or measurement items. Okay, so most of the time you will ask in a questionnaire, you'll use a Likert scale. We call it Likert scale from 1 to 5, 1 to 7, or 1 to 10. Right? So you are nodding. I assume you know what we are talking. Okay, good. Right. So at least one of you is actually nodding a positive way. So the thing is, when you have 1 to 5, 1 to 7, 1 to 10, those are Likert scales. But sometimes you ask people about what's your favorite color, and this is called nominal scales. Okay, so if people say that red, some people said blue, you cannot call them as like 1 or 2 or 3. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. Those are qualitative answers, and sometimes we use this actually different condition in experimental setting. And actually, what happens, especially in the coding part, when you collect your data, so you ask people like as blue, that first condition, a red, second condition, and somehow on Excel you have those labels as 1 and 2. So if you just assume those are numeric variables and use it that way, you are doomed. Okay, so you will get some data in the end because R doesn't know if your data is nominal without you telling them. If you just code them as 1, 2, etc., it will just run an analysis, and then you interpret your analysis saying that my average favorite color is 2.5. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, so even if you code them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So make sure that you collect data properly without keeping in mind that some scales are different than others. Okay, so nominals are basically qualitative, so you cannot do any sort of arithmetic operations on them. Nothing. Okay. This is purely descriptive and subjective as well. Second one, ordinal scales. Most of the students have hard time, especially with this scale. Why? You ask people about, and I'm sure you are going to ask about their education level. Okay, so what is the highest education that you get, or something, or their age? And instead of asking like numeric variable, what is your age, you generally ask like as a bracket. Okay, so that's a like 18 to 25 or 25 to 35 type of range. So when you ask those, you think that, okay, I can actually code them as 1, 2, 3, 4, like this one. Education less than high school is 1, high school or high school equivalent is 2, some college is 3, and college degree 4, and graduate school is 5. Okay? So when you collect the data like that, most of the students, I mean, they code them on their Excel document or CSV document as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of writing like high school, etc. And no problem at that point. But if you put this in a regression analysis, assuming that this is an interval, and when we say interval, you assume that the difference between 1 and 2 and 2, 3 is exactly the same. And some of you still might think that yes, they are exactly the same, but what is the problem with that assumption? So when you have this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in mathematical operations, you're basically saying that the difference between 5 and 4 is 1, all right? 4 and 3 is 1 as well. But do you think that the difference between college degree and some college is exactly the equal of the difference between high school or high school equivalent and less than high school? No? Or yes? Anyone thinking that they are the same? No? I think some of you agree. Not sure though. You should be more confident saying that no, right? So you can actually shake your head a bit more confident. It is not the same, right? Because this is very vague as well, less than high school. We don't know, like secondary, primary as well. We don't know their level. And this is also high school or high school, some college. What do you mean some college? First year, second year? So are they dropouts? So what happened? So since you don't know their exact level, you cannot assume the difference between those two measurements levels are exactly the same. And what happens if you try to take the average of those, if you take, I don't know, try to calculate the standard deviation, which standard deviations basically do some sort of mathematical operations to see the difference between the mean and then take the square of the mean differences. And all of those are actually based on a false assumption that those intervals are exactly the same. Okay? I am emphasizing this. I know maybe you find this is like boring, but at the same time this is critical because, like I said, like last couple of years or last 5-6 years, whenever I teach this module marketing analytics, most of the students somehow fail to understand this concept. Okay, so make sure that you have a good understanding of ordinal scales, interval scales, and ratio scales. So interval scales. This is maybe the most popular one, like Likert scale, or if you ask people their purchase intention. Right, so how likely you are going to buy this product in your next purchase from 1 to 7, that type of questions. Those are all interval scales. They are exactly like ordinal scales, but with the assumption that the difference between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 are exactly the same or very similar. Okay, so exactly the same, saying exactly the same is maybe a bit ambitious because for some people, this is also a limitation of Likert scale. Some people, and maybe this is like very advanced level of discussion, but just let you know, because some people criticizing this Likert scale, saying that for many people this is also subjective, right? So if you ask people like, can you evaluate the taste of this wine from 1 to 7, very bitter, very sweet? For some people, maybe 5 is too sweet, but for others, maybe 6 or 7 is too sweet, right? So their understanding of too sweet might be different, and they're tasting the same thing, and you cannot actually get the exact same output. But still, it is better than nothing, actually, and it is very close to their overall, like understanding their overall perception. And finally, ratio scales. This is the safest part, right? So if you have ratio scales like sales numbers, if you ask people age directly, or any sort of revenue, numeric values, those are perfectly fine. And the main difference between ratio scale and interval scale is what? I think last week I shared this. Anyone remembers? So what is the main difference between...
Ratio has a 0.
Yeah, perfect. Someone is paying attention. Thank you. Great. So I'd like to give you some bonus points to you, but I don't have bonus points. But in my mind, you got some bonus points. Great. Yeah, so ratio scale has a perfect 0. Okay, so absolute 0. Not perfect, but absolute 0. So what is absolute 0? For example, in this question, if you look at the wine taste, participant evaluation of the wine taste. So from 1 to 7, very bitter, very sweet. If you put 0 there, what does 0 mean? So like disaster, or I don't know, like really bitter or something. So you actually start from 1, and putting a 0 there doesn't mean anything, right? So it will even like confuse people. Like, what do you mean by 0, right? So no taste at all. So since there is no absolute 0 in the interval scale, we cannot do some sort of arithmetic operations on that. You don't have any seat? Any seat for your friend? Okay. Yeah, so this is the main difference between ratio and interval scale. Okay?